welcome to a brand new episode of the Jedi Way here on the Outlaw Nation channel. I am the Outlaw, but now known as Rocha Fed around these parts. John Rocha, joined as always by the co-host of Force Toast Pod, one of the great players in the Schmodown Star Wars League, and of course, someone who's a massive fan of Star Wars. That is Laura Kelly. How are you, Laura?
I'm doing well, John. Thank you. That's so funny that you brought up Schmodown. I feel like I haven't given it a lot of thought in a long time. Just randomly started thinking back on some Schmodown memories today. And I went through the whole cycle. It was like, I did not belong there. What was I doing there? That was ridiculous. But then also it evolved into, that was so much fun. I made so many friends. It's mostly good memories. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. It's a funny coincidence. Hadn't thought about it in a while.
It happens every once in a while. I go down the same road as well. I just get in a mood and I go, I'll watch a few highlights of the matches and just have some fun remembering the times before it got crazy, because the beginnings of it were a lot of fun. There's a lot of memories from that. And of course, watching some of the Star Wars matches when we used to get celebrities to come in, like Sam Witwer and other people to come and do these massive Iron Man competitions, Ken Knapsack and Scrimshaw and all of them. So it's always fun to remember how great that Star Wars League was. And of course, Alex Damon being the big old champion there as a part of it. But we are not here to talk about Schmodown memories or go down memory lane. We're here to talk about two really big stories that broke this week. And unfortunately, as you notice, Kevin Smets cannot join us this week. He is finishing off a job that he is doing as an editor, and unfortunately, they would not let him out to join us. But he's going to take some time over the next few weeks, so he will be back regularly on the show as we go forward. But yeah, we are going to jump into two big topics here, the Kathleen Kennedy stuff and the Andor Season 2 trailer. So sit back, strap in, and let's get to it here, Laura, without wasting any time. Kathleen Kennedy, according to Matthew Filoni over at Puck News, and Puck is a pretty reliable source, said that they have been told by an unnamed source that Kathleen Kennedy was actually planning to leave last year and had even set up an exit interview with a journalist, but she decided to stay for one more year. And now they're hearing through associates of hers that she plans to retire by the end of 2025. However, Laura, a separate source told Variety that it's, quote, pure speculation. And another source told CNN, who is familiar with the matter, that there's nothing there right now, any announcement of Kennedy's retirement. If indeed there's anything to announce, will be made public when actual decisions are made. And to be fair, Lucasfilm did not respond, nor did Disney, to any request for comment on this situation. So we have heard this before. We've heard rumblings of this before. Certainly Jeff and I heard through the hot mic last year through some sources that she was considering stepping down. So it seems like that was very much in motion last year, at least from what Filoni is reporting on Puck. But this feels to me like this is actually real. Like she's going to leave by the end of 2025. This is the final kind of hurrah of hers. But what do you think, Laura? Do you buy that? You're notoriously suspicious and a skeptic of these kinds of things. So do you believe this? Do you think this is actually happening? Or what's your opinion on all of this?
I think it feels like reading between the lines a little bit, but it feels like this news got out before they were ready for it to, and now they're trying to backpedal a little bit. It's feeling a little bit like that. I tend to be pretty skeptical. We're already off to a great start. Skeptical about some of these news sources that I'm just not as familiar with. It's not that they're not the trades. You don't have to be the trades to be a reliable news source, but some of these, Puck News is one of them that we just don't get a ton of Star Wars drops from. So I'm just not as familiar with them. However, this source did correctly I think was the first to report back in October that Stephen Knight would be exiting the Rey movie. So we've gotten accurate reports from them before. It's really interesting how fast I think the turnaround was, that somebody was really quick to get back out in front of some of these news sources to be like, no, you'll know when we tell you, but there's not really anything to announce yet. That happened really quickly and suspiciously quickly from the time that we heard this news until that happened. So that's why I'm kind of thinking that there might be some truth to this, and Disney wasn't as ahead of it as they would have liked to have thought.
Yeah, it seems that way, that they had a setup plan here, and they probably don't have a successor yet. So they probably didn't want to announce that she was leaving until they had a successor to take her place. I mean, it's
Fair
like a
point.
right. It's like most sports teams. You don't announce the coach is leaving unless you've got someone lined up, or you've got a coaching search underway, or anything, or you've already been putting out feelers behind the scenes. So it seems to me like they wanted to wait until this thing was set up so they could make a seamless transition, and she could champion the new person coming in to take over and talk about what the transition plan would be in terms of handing over the projects and also getting updates on the projects, right? Because we still have a Mangold film that is supposedly in the works and supposedly going to start shooting soon. We have the Ray film that has been going through multiple writers. The last we heard, George Nolfi's on this thing, and Daisy Ridley's very excited on it. Charmin Obey-Chenoy still directing it. And we've got another movie in the air. We've got the Lando series, or Lando film, whatever's going on with that, with Donald Glover that's roaming around here. So there's still some stuff that's, and even the Simon Kinberg trilogy from last year, which was November of 2024, only 4 or 5 months ago that was announced. So that's still kind of dancing around. So it seems like there's a lot of plates spinning that someone's going to have to walk into and decide what is going to happen. So the fact that they haven't lined someone up, I think they were caught a bit off guard by this news, because Matt didn't drop this news until like 9 o'clock on a Monday or something like that. It was really late in the night. So it was a bit of a surprise, probably wanted to beat the trades to it. And now it's out there. So does this surprise you at all, though, that she's finally walking away after 12 years of being in charge of this thing, making billions of dollars for Star Wars? Yes, making mistakes as well, but a lot of positives all around. It's a very complex, mixed kind of legacy here, much like George Lucas. So what do you think about this situation? Do you think it was time? Does it feel right to you? And how do you view her now in light of if this is the end this year?
She's had a really successful, really incredible career. I mean, so many of the movies
True.
that we love, and so many of the movies that were in, like the inner geekdom space of Schmodown were produced by her. Like she has such a, storied career behind her. But I've always been mostly in favor of her. I've not really had a ton of, it's hard to say, because it's when you think about these like gigantic corporations, it's really hard to be on anybody's side, especially these days. And it just feels like this gigantic rich people club. So there's a limit to it, but I have been mostly in favor with everything that she's done and the decisions she's made. Yes, I agree that there have been some misses, but she's 71 years old at this point in time. Yeah. So regardless of my opinion of her work and her decisions, it's got to be time to go, right? Like, let the next generation step up so they too can start mentoring the future executives that will follow them. And this is something we've talked about a lot, not just in like, the sort of film and entertainment industry, but this has been a thing in every industry where boomers in these executive roles need to stop holding on to control and power and pass the baton. Because if you're not taking mentorship seriously during your tenure, not only are you going to be, you're going to end up like tarnishing your own legacy, because you're going to leave everything burning behind you as you leave, like in your wake. So, and that's something I have unfortunately witnessed firsthand. So I've seen firsthand how important that is. I hope at this point that they've been mentoring somebody to step up into this role. I've heard a lot of rumblings that like maybe Carrie Beck is like under consideration. I think she's been president of development for a while now at Lucasfilm. So maybe she moves up into this role. It is interesting to see some of the people that have been like, maybe it'll be Filoni or Favreau. I'm like, that is such an absurd idea. Like that either of those people would want to leave the creative spaces that they work in to like sit in an office in a boardroom all day. Like, it's just absurd. It just goes to show like how many people don't. And I'm not even in the entertainment industry. This is just the corporate world. How people seem to not understand that. So I've seen a lot of people rejoicing about it. All these fans rejoicing that she's going to be leaving. But I'm like, she's probably going to have a producer credit on all these films that are coming out over the course of the next couple of years. But I know that you haven't like always seen eye to eye with some of the decisions that Kathleen Kennedy's made. I mean, how are you feeling about this?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I'm not in that let's make Kathleen Kennedy videos and bash her like crazy club. That's not my thing, because most of those people will never know what it's like to be inside of a movie studio and what the multiple machinations are that goes on behind the scenes, the amount of people that you need to please, the board, dealing with Bob Iger, dealing with Bob Chapek, different creatives, those things. There's a lot here. I think she made the misstep right off the bat. Force Awakens was fantastic. Not having a set concrete plan. I think she has been playing catch up ever since. And then that sequel trilogy, the sequel trilogy ended so terribly with Rise of Skywalker. I mean, you're pretty much known by your sequel trilogies if you're in charge. George, I love the original trilogy. I still don't like the prequel trilogy, but I know a lot of people do. So people have a more positive opinion of George Lucas overall who were younger when those things came out. So I respect that. I think there will be people who love this sequel trilogy down the road. It's going to surprise a lot of people. And even now, people were talking about bringing back, obviously, Rey's coming back. People want Oscar Isaac to come back. People want John Boyega to come back as Finn. So there's still a reappreciation for these characters. It's happening very quickly now in the possible. And who knows who takes over, and maybe there's a new trilogy they set up there. But I think she's done as well as she could do in the situation that she was in. Now, I know some people are going to be like, oh, there you go, shilling again, blah, 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 whatever. It doesn't matter. You've never run a studio sitting in a YouTube apartment, screaming up at your mom to get the meatloaf for you. To me, this is a situation where you're like, you got to understand how much business is involved here. And yes, did she make some missteps? Sure. You could argue The Acolyte certainly was a bit of a mess. I think Leslie Headland had her knees cut out from under her. She wanted to make a dark Star Wars series from the point of view of the Sith. That would have been amazing. Certain people got involved and turned it around, and now it didn't work well, and people blame Kathleen Kennedy. Certainly the sequel trilogy is on her, but look, Mandalorian came out, and people want to discount Mandalorian like somehow Filoni and Favreau snuck it under her nose and shot this whole thing under her nose without her knowing about it. And it's just nonsense. And look at the amazing books that we've gotten under her leadership. If you're going to bash her for things that came out under her leadership, you've also got to praise her for the things that came out under her leadership. The comic books, for the most part, have been fantastic. Those runs as well. Some new characters have been introduced. But yes, it's fair to say there has been some uneven results to some of the stuff they went through. I think she did have an agenda to a degree to be a bit more diverse in the approach and the interpretation, and certainly her wanting a Rey film. I think that's been a thing of hers for quite some time, to have a female-led Star Wars film. So she wanted to do that, right? Did it all work out well? No, not in the end, but she is walking away just fine. When other people are hustling for YouTube views and clicks and likes and all of that, she's going to be quite happy being a super, super, super millionaire. And there's a legacy of great, as you said, great entertainment, great movies that are Kathleen Kennedy's that you have to give respect to. Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T., Gremlins, Color Purple, The Goonies, Empire of the Sun, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the Back to the Future trilogy, the Indiana Jones films. And yes, Dial of Destiny is a mistake for sure for some people. I liked it, but I know some people didn't. But she's been a part of 8 films that have been nominated for numerous Oscars. And so she is going to be fine in all of this. And I imagine, Laura, that they are going to transition to whoever they're going to transition to at Celebration in Tokyo. Doesn't that make sense? They're going to give her a big send-off probably, because the fans who go there don't usually go there to bash it or start any kind of stuff. They go there to really enjoy and praise Star Wars. So I imagine that's the time where you'll have an appreciation for Kathleen Kennedy by all those people there, and then they'll transition to someone new, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I've been to every celebration since 2017. Never once have I been in a room where Kathleen Kennedy got booed. I think every room I've been in, actually, I think she's gotten a standing ovation.
Yeah.
So there are circles of fans that are overall pretty happy with the work that she's done. And you're right. You bring up The Mandalorian, you bring up the fact that The Force Awakens kicked off this trilogy in just a magnificent fashion. So she has a lot of wins under her belt. So I don't know. I think that Celebration makes sense to bring that announcement up. And you're right, to announce the successor, who I have to believe is going to come from within, that this would be an internal promotion. They're not going to be like bringing in some outsider from some other, or like poaching someone from another film studio or something, or at least I really hope not. I really hope that we're kind of keeping it in the family when it comes to Star Wars. I think that's really important. I feel like they have a decent number of candidates that are ready and willing to step up. So I hope that that's what happens.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give her credit for Andor as well, and give her credit for Rogue One, because she brought in Tony Gilroy to save Rogue One. It made $1 billion, and then she brought Tony to do Andor, and Andor got all kinds of love from the award shows, and now season 2 is about around the corner. We're going to talk about it in just a second or in a little bit, but certainly there's a lot there that she can feel proud of, but certainly there are some mistakes. Certainly, I think I don't want to give the anti-woke people too much credit, but I think there is legitimacy of an agenda here, but the agenda should have been followed by really good projects that came out well. And it seems like there was a lot of cooks in the kitchen, or maybe too many masters to serve in the end. And that caused some issues behind the scenes. I think she deserves blame. I'm not trying to remove blame for sure, but I think there's a much more complex situation than people actually realize from the inside out, rather than from the outside in with these kinds of situations. And it usually is. It usually is. I mean, Feige's falling apart right now over at Marvel, but he has a chance to save it if Born Again is fantastic, which is next week. If Thunderbolts is great, if Fantastic Four is great, if Ironheart is great, and then if Doomsday and the Secret Wars turn out well, we're all going to stop talking about how Feige's lost it and whatever. So it just all depends on if you can get good projects, good people under you to work for you. So, I'm not going to take away any of the mistakes that she made. It's there, but I think people want to downplay her successes in order to keep their narrative going that she was the worst person ever, which is really not true. Laura, let me ask you this. Who the hell wants this job? Like, let's be honest. Yeah. They ran George Lucas out, the fans did, and you all take responsibility. The fans ran George Lucas out. They're running out Kathleen Kennedy. Who the hell wants this job? This feels like the worst fan base, like a sports fan base that hates every coach you get. I don't know who would want to take this job, because it is so thankless, because once again, it's on a downturn and someone new is coming in, just like when Lucas came in, it was on a downturn. Oh, sorry. When Lucas left, it was on a downturn. So what do you think about that? Who would want this job?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, the person either has to have a really thick skin. That's got to be part of it for sure. Or they just have to be insane. So it's one of the two. Like, and hopefully maybe there's like a little bit of both, like mixed in there. Yeah. But I think the thick skin's really going to have to be there. That's going to be an important part of this. And I'm sure, somebody who's, especially, I talked about how it would make sense to bring in somebody internal. That person's already bared witness to all of it, probably pretty close to upfront. So I hope that that's the direction that they end up going in, just for the sake of that person's psyche. That they, but I imagine it's not going to be an easy job for whoever steps in.
So let's go through these candidates. I'm gonna toss them all out there and see what you think, Laura. Kevin Feige. A lot of people have been talking about Kevin Feige maybe stepping in starting next year. Dave Filoni and Favreau, or some version of that, like Filoni with Favreau, or Favreau with Feige, maybe. Rain Roberts is someone who was at the company for 12 years and was being groomed by Kennedy as her replacement, possibly. But last week, she took the job as Searchlight's senior VP of production. David Heyman, who did the Harry Potter films and the Paddington films. He's the overall producer of those. Legendary Entertainment's Mary Parent, who did Dune and the Godzilla franchises. Peter Rice, who was fired by Bob Chapek unceremoniously because he was nervous that Peter was going to take his job. He developed the X-Men franchise over there, so he's got a good connection with actors and writers. J.J. Abrams, I've seen some people toss that out. Emma Watts over there, who's the longtime president of production at 20th Century Fox, who did Deadpool, X-Men, and Avatar. Hannah Minghella, who's a former employee of J.J. Abrams there at Bad Robot. She has done Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, Hotel Transylvania, Jumanji, Goosebumps. And I throw one out there, but probably no one's going to consider it. But Steven Spielberg, I don't know. Would he want to walk away from creative stuff and now be an executive? Maybe, I don't know. Simon Kinberg has run the X-Men franchise, and he was promised a trilogy just 4 months ago, as I mentioned. And as you said, Carrie Beck. So do any of these feel like the right fit at this point for Kathleen Kennedy?
It's hard to say. I don't know if any of those names outside of Carrie Beck really jump out to me. I don't see Rain Roberts leaving recently, all to then just come back that quickly. The Filoni and Favreau thing I already covered. I just think that's absolutely ludicrous. I think Abrams might be in the same category as that. I don't know
Yeah.
why these people would stop doing what they're doing to take
Yeah.
that thankless job.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's probably in their interest monetarily to keep doing what they're doing in terms of the creative capacity. But
That's true.
especially J.J. Abrams. But I think that you've got a good list there. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on that list. If there's somebody that jumps out to you, you're more familiar with these people than I am and
Well,
these names. But yeah, I'm just kind of hoping for that internal push to get Carrie back maybe up in the seat.
I just don't know if they'll go with a woman, man.
I know.
Laura, I really think they're going to go with a white male. I
Yeah.
really do. And this is kind of a reverse DEI hire. I feel like this is what is going to happen because they don't want a person of color because the anti-woke people are so upset. They don't want a woman because the sexist people are going to get upset. So I think they're going to go with a white male and see where they go with that. I don't think I agree with you. People forget this is just because James Gunn is trying to do this. And if you watch those DC updates, it's a little bit of a mess over there. Transitioning from creative into a role that Kevin Feige has is incredibly difficult. I think the Hollywood Reporter Variety broke it down like 10% of your job is creative. 90% of your job is dealing with the board, dealing with the productions, dealing with all this other stuff, the merchandise, all there's so much that is asked of your time and attention. You're not on sets dictating the course of Star Wars. You wouldn't do that. So how many of these creatives would want to surrender that? And as you said, for less money than what they would make being a creative. So I don't see that happening with Filoni and Favreau. And I don't think Filoni is looking good after Ahsoka and the rumors about him messing with the Acolyte to the point that we got the mess that we got. So, and I think Favreau doesn't want that smoke. I think Favreau's like, you know what? That's too much of a headache. I think he would do it to help maybe transition to the next person. Maybe he shepherds it for a little while, but I think eventually he would want to hand it off very quickly. Feige, I don't think he's leaving until Doomsday. So do you want to wait 3 or 4 years until Kevin's available? I don't know if that's possible. Rain Roberts, as I agree with you, jumping back, I don't think that's possible. Mary Parent, the Dune franchise is continuing. Why would she walk away from that to take a chance on something like this? I don't see her doing that. Peter Rice, I also don't see that as a possibility because that's kind of bad blood there. Emma Watts is a possibility, but again, I think they want to go with a white man. I think David Heyman of all these people is the one that I go back to because he's kind of quiet, unassuming British guy, doesn't take too much attention. He's done, as I said, the Harry Potter films. He's done Paddington, so his experience with franchises. I know he's not an internal hire, but certainly he's someone who could maybe come in, steady the ship a little bit, make some populist decisions that make sense, and then kind of get everything a little bit straight. And then once they do, then they can decide if he wants to stay on to shepherd a little bit more of Star Wars down the road. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see who it ends up being and how this happens. Because I also think, Laura, not a lot of people are knocking on that door wanting to take this job. It's the mental health aspect of it all. You can't deny it, you know?
Yeah, for sure. David Heyman is definitely an interesting candidate. I mean, he is 63 years old. So yeah. I can see the sort of idea of bringing somebody in like that in what is known to be a temporary capacity.
Right.
But even at his age, I'd be like, I don't know. I'm cheering for somebody hopefully younger than that. But we'll see. So if you're going to steady the ship, like let's make sure you've got some longevity in you. And I don't, like, you're going from one old person to another. I'm just going to say it. Like, why? I don't understand what the justification is there. There have to be other options.
Probably. One last thing I want to ask you before we move off this topic here, Laura. As I mentioned, there are movies in motion here. What do you think happens if Kathleen Kennedy leaves here? Do you think the Rey movie is now maybe not going to happen, or maybe we have to wait for the new person to come in? What happens with the James Mangold movie? What happens with the other projects that are in motion? Do you think do we see Charmin Obaid-Chinoy kind of quietly moved off of this movie? What do you think is going to happen with these films? Do they get delayed and get put on hold until the new person comes in? Or do things keep just kind of churning along here and the new person has to deal with all these projects that they did not greenlight and they did not approve to be greenlit and take them over?
Yeah, I think That's a good question. Like you have to imagine that Kathleen Kennedy's still going to get the producer credit on these projects that are in
True,
motion
100%.
should they come to fruition.
Yeah.
Um I have said before and I'll say again that I question if the Mangold movie will actually make it to the finish line. I have a lot of doubts about that one in particular. I
Right.
think the Rey movie is far enough along in the process that the idea of scrapping it at this point feels kind of
Oh,
crazy to me.
yeah, it's like such
So
a step backwards. Yeah.
right, exactly. So that's kind of where I am with that. Whether this other person comes in and wants to take a producer credit on those, I don't know. But I
Yeah.
feel like it Lucasfilm, I mean, we see it in the credits of like these live action Disney Plus shows. The number of producers that are working on all of these projects, it's a very long list. It's
Yeah.
not like the CEO leaves and everything comes to a grinding halt. Things
Right.
will continue to progress, and that person will kind of just slip into the role, hopefully. And hopefully there's a transition plan in place already, or at least
Yeah.
something that's in progress. If this is sort of what's been in the works for a while, which it seems like it has been, given that Kathleen Kennedy, we sort of heard those hints of this happening last year.
Yeah, yeah. So it'll be curious. I mean, if there's any way to guarantee we'll get that Filoni movie, it's for himself. It's Filoni taking that position from Kathleen Kennedy. But I just don't know many creatives that would want to jump into this position. It's almost little to no benefit for yourself overall, because you're giving up what you really want to do is be a creative, and you're taking over a franchise trying to save it. And there's really there's such a small percentage of chance that you're going to do it, and that they're not going to eventually turn on you, because people loved Kathleen after Force Awakens, and then it all just kind of fell apart afterwards. So, we'll see what happens with that. And of course, we'll keep tabs on it here on the show for sure. Well, Laura, let's jump into our next topic here. Let's get into this thing. And one of the things that are upcoming here for Star Wars, that's Andor Season 2. Look at that swaggering hunk of a man. The new trailer dropped earlier this week, about a 90-second trailer. I was expecting a little bit of a longer one, so I was surprised. Only 90 seconds. But we got some great stuff here with Orson Krennic. We got more with Mon Mothma. Bix certainly feels like there's a lot of PTSD going on there with some of the looks. We got so much more of a Saw Gerrera here, looking even more of a part of this show here. And we got some awesome visuals. I mean, this ship being shot to hell by stormtroopers was pretty amazing. We got some awesome shots within the trailer itself as well. And there was a swagger, there was a confidence, there was a cockiness almost to this trailer. So Laura, what are your thoughts on this? What do you think of this trailer overall, and anything specific that jumped out at you?
Well, I mean, that first image that you threw up there, like Cassian Andor joined the rebellion, and return got a closet full of amazing jackets as reward. I mean, just incredible. He's there's multiple in the trailer alone of just like smoking jackets. Like, it's just insane. He looks great. So I'm sure we'll see a lot more great Cassian fashion in the show. The music really struck me as odd the first time I watched this trailer. I actually really didn't care for it on my first viewing, just because there's a lot happening in this trailer. It's pretty busy. There's a lot of action being showcased here, and I just didn't feel like the music added anything. If anything, I felt like it was kind of a distraction.
Okay.
My second viewing, I kind of came around with it, and having watched it now several times, I'm more on board. And I also kind of get the appeal of what they were going for, of having a song like that in a trailer. It almost feels like more inviting to non-Star Wars fans than like having a more, like, I don't know, this sort of like growing score that we sort of come to expect when it comes to a Star Wars project. So I thought it ended up working really well for me. Makes it feel a little bit looser, not as like a strict adherence to a trailer formula that Star Wars fans have sort of come to know. So that was really the thing that stood out to me. I mean, like right off the bat, just because it was so different. What did you think of this music on here?
I didn't mind the music because I know Steve Earle. So for me, it wasn't like, I thought, oh, this is an interesting choice to do this song, because they're kind of low key hanging a bit of a lantern on the fact that it's a revolution song and it's talking about, attacking a force that is trying to step on your throat. So it was on the nose for me. So to see people not liking it, I get it. I totally get some people may not be. I mean, Steve Earle's not like freaking Bruce Springsteen. He's very much an acquired taste, but for the people that like him, they like his music. But there are people who also felt like the song, even if they like Steve Earle, didn't quite fit the trailer because of, as you said, the busyness of the trailer. You wanted a song that maybe matched the busyness, and this one was more kind of like a yin and yang, like playing it slow while the trailer was having some pretty big stuff going on within it. So I understand the criticism, but I certainly didn't mind the music. This trailer was so badass, man. As soon as I was done with my reaction and I uploaded it, I went back and watched that trailer like 10 times just because it's only a minute and a half. So it really didn't take a lot of like 15 minutes to watch it 10 times and just pausing on certain moments and certain shots. I mean, I've never seen this kind of shot in Star Wars. Like this was an awesome shot from behind, from in the ship there, seeing that missile going in. As you mentioned, the swag. I mean, look at the smirk and look at that jacket and look at the overall confidence that he's got. I mean, that was the last shot of the trailer, that kind of knowing smirk of his. And this is a different Cassian Andor than what we saw in season 1. This is a guy who is now embracing his role. And it looks to me like he's going to replace Luthen Rael. He's going to replace Stellan Skarsgård and take over. And it seemed like that was what he was essentially doing in the first season, was grooming him to take his spot. So just the look, the style, the fact that he's walking into what looks like Coruscant very cockily, you know, there's just something about it that seems to me that he is going to take it over. The Mon Mothma stuff is interesting. The shots we had of her, she looked pretty stressed out. Then she's dancing in the wedding dance for her daughter, but it seems like a dance of utter pain and sadness and frustration, or maybe that's joy and she's just kind of letting it out. I don't know, but it's an interesting thing to see her in. And then the Orson Krennic stuff was fascinating. And then, of course, Saw Gerrera. So, I mean, Saw, we're clearly going to have a tale with Saul, right, Laura? I mean, these are going to be broken up into 4 separate 3-episode blocks that we can enjoy over a month, which is insane. We'll get your thoughts on that. But what do you think of Saw and Mon Mothma and getting more of an Orson as well in this trailer?
I mean, Mon Mothma was my favorite part of season 1, so I'm really excited to see her story play out in this particular season. I love those scenes at the wedding of her like letting loose and dancing. And yeah, I did catch that if you kind of pause it at the right moment, you can sort of see that she's got like a pretty upset look on her face.
Yeah.
So there's something very like layered happening in that scene. And I'm just really, really excited to see it play out. Really curious to see what happens with Perrin too, with the husband, because they had like such a contentious relationship. So just really, really fascinated to see what happens, because we have some idea of what happens with Mon Mothma. We know that Gorman massacre happens, and she references it in a speech, and that plays out in season 3 of Star Wars Rebels. So I'll be kind of curious to see like how that ties in, if at all. I've seen a lot of speculation that we're going to be actually witnessing the Gorman massacre in this season of this show. So I am very curious to watch that go down, and then to see her speech to the Senate afterwards. That scene with Luthen Rael, I mean, we only get a really quick glimpse of him in this theater, but I think in this trailer, but I think your theory about Cassian sort of stepping into his shoes is probably pretty solid. We have a couple of shots of Clea like hugging Cassian and looking very upset and stressed out, which feels like we know that Luthen Rael is like, he's not going to survive this series, right? Like if he survived, we would be familiar with this character in the canon at some point. Totally. So I think it's safe to say that he won't. But yeah, really great to see all of these familiar faces. Saw Gerrera, I kind of question, are we actually going to see like what happens to him and like how he actually becomes what he becomes? Because I feel like that story, like, I don't know if did it happen in like a book? Maybe it played out there. All I remember is from Star Wars Rebels is that we like saw him still looking pretty healthy in what we thought was not too long before Rogue One. So it's like a small time period where just shit really hits the fan for poor Saw. So I'll be curious to see whether or not we actually get those details, or if they've got a lot of stuff they have to squeeze in to these 12 episodes into this one season in order to tell a complete story. And you have to squeeze it in really a 3-episode block. Since we're sort of or I guess it's 4. Is it 4 episodes? No,
3 episodes. 3 episodes, but jumping a year each of those 3 episodes. This is really exciting. And I'm very excited to see all of Cassian's fashion, because the trailer, it's doing its job. It's teasing, because he just looks great in every single shot that he's in. So that's really exciting. What do you think about the way they're lining this up. I mean, this is going to be done in a month.
I know.
I don't like that. I personally don't feel good about it. I've heard people say that it's because of the Emmys. That's why they're doing it this way. And I really don't think you should cater the Emmys, for God's sakes, in terms of your release strategy. So to me, that doesn't make me feel good. But do you like this? Do you think this makes sense? It's going to be here and gone in a month,
No, content creators are shaking in their boots. The fact that we all have to, like, those of us who do recaps and reviews of these shows are going to have to be doing a review of what's probably going to be close to like a 90-ish minute movie every week. That sounds really overwhelming, frankly. Right. So no, I'm not wild about it. I think it was maybe The Bear that went a different route with this, where they filmed their season and released it and missed that deadline of like being considered for the Emmys. And then I remember watching the Emmys like the year after that being like, wait, we're talking about that was so long ago.
Yeah.
So maybe they're trying to avoid that. I don't know. But honestly, I kind of respect The Bear for doing that, because I don't love this release schedule either. Yeah. I don't mind the like blocks of 3 episodes that are sort of set in one time period and then doing a time jump. That format is fine with me. So I don't have a problem with that. But yeah, this tight release schedule, it would have been nice to savor it a little bit more. Like they did the 3 episode premiere for season 1. That's fine. But I would have, preferred that they not do it exactly like this for season 2. It just sounds like a lot.
I think you're right. It's 4 Andor movies. I think you can make a case that you can argue this is a quadrology. Like you're essentially making an Andor quadrology, because we know the level of filmmaking here rivals any theatrical filmmaking that you've seen. Tony is a theatrical film director, so the way he's shooting this, just from the trailer alone, the scenes in the trailer, I mean, those 3 ships, as we see that body lying in that walkway, I mean, that's an awesome shot. The shots we get of Deidre here, her shot, I mean, all of that looks really cool. So there's so much here that looks like a theatrical level quality. So I think you could argue, if you remove the credits, these are essentially 4 Andor movies, 4 separate Andor movies set in different time periods that we're going to be enjoying. So yeah, as much as I may hate the release schedule, it is exciting to be able to watch all 3 of them at the same time. But you're right, reviewing them, you're going to make so many notes as you're watching it, as opposed to just one episode.
Yeah, insane. And I really enjoy how much Yavin is in. I can't remember if that was one of the Yavin scenes or not. I think it was, but the amount of like Yavin or places that look like Yavin 4 in this trailer is so cool. It just warms my heart. It's really, really cool to see. And it does make me wonder, like, who's going to pop up in this show, because we know that Tony Gilroy, like, this isn't his thing. He's not going to be like reaching for every cameo he can possibly shoehorn into his series. That is not at all what he's about. In fact, I think he probably goes out of his way to avoid it. But you have to imagine that, like, beyond maybe seeing the ghost flying around in the background, coming and going from Yavin, that we might see someone. And it got me thinking about the possibility of like seeing Leia at some point. We've got it, like, what is it, 3-4 year period to cover. And I wonder, in the hands of a skilled filmmaker like Tony Gilroy, is he the right person to be the person that like shows young Leia and recasts young Leia? And I have to think that like he would have the delicate hand to actually pull that off. And I'm curious to hear what you think of something like that, or of any cameos in general of people showing up.
I'm not as precious about the original trilogy characters popping up and stuff, as long as it's done well. I like Luke coming back at season 2 of The Mandalorian. I thought that was awesome, and I was such a big fan of it. I think I called it as well, but like I still thought it was an awesome experience the way they did it. The stuff with him and Ahsoka, maybe a little bit less so, but it still was nice to see. Leia in Rogue One is not strong in terms of the uncanny valley and all of that. So if the technology has come along where it can be believable that she's in this and have some scenes that really work, then I'm all for it if it makes sense. And like you said, I trust Filoni. I trust Gilroy to know how to use this correctly and not sacrifice the overall message that he's trying to make with his story and the overall look and vibe that he wants the season 2 of Andor to have. So yeah, I absolutely think I would be fine with Leia showing up because she's in Rogue One. So it makes sense to have her be like a princess now who's maybe running certain rebellious stuff behind the scenes. Certainly her comic book alluded to extra adventures that she'd been on when she was being a rebel. So why wouldn't she be a part of this? And you had her as a little child in the Kenobi series, so it only makes sense that you would find a way to bring her into it. I think Luke less so, I think Kenobi less so, but certainly I think Leia is a very strong possibility. Might even get a solo. Would that freak you out if we saw Alden Ehrenreich? There's just no way that's possible, right? Like there's no way.
I don't know how he
Maybe
would fit
Lando.
into it, but
Maybe
we
Lando.
did have Lando actually, because Lando appeared in Rebels.
Right.
Leia showed up in Star Wars Rebels in an early season as like a 16-year-old kind of first getting involved in the rebellion, which is, I think, another point in favor of like maybe she shows up. But yeah, I think Lando could be a fun one too, actually.
Yeah.
That would be a good time.
I think that would work overall. Any thoughts on Orson Krennic? Any thoughts on the look and the energy coming off of him and what he's leaning towards? Like we're going to clearly have. Oh, and we got a K2SO sighting. Laura, what do you think of that?
I love Ben Mendelsohn. I love him as Krennic. I'm so excited. I remember when we first learned that he was going to be showing up in this season, and it was always kind of a gimme that he would probably show up. But even once they confirmed it, I was all in. I really like him in this role, so I'm excited to see him. It looks like they may have made, I don't know if it was just lighting, makeup, or what, but he looks great. Like really, they may have done a little something there to like maybe de-age him a little bit and be a little bit more in line with where he would have been. I mean, Rogue One was a while back now. So we're pretty far out from that. K2SO is an interesting one that I'm a little bit worried about. And I know that I just need to let it go. I need to not worry about it. But I don't care for this practice of retconning comics in the canon. Like, I suspect that that's what's going to happen. I prefer that they would just like adapt that story that's already been established. But I also like, can you imagine saying that to Tony Gilroy's face and just being like, that story already exists. You have to do that. Like, I can't imagine doing that. Like, he's going to tell his story and he's going to get his messaging out there the way that he wants to do it.
Yeah.
He is not going to give a shit that there is a pre-existing one-shot comic where K2SO and Cassian Andor met. I don't like this process of retconning them. I'm just trying to mentally prepare myself that is what's going to happen. At the end of the day, comics, in the stories that they tell, in the artwork in comics, are valid. It is a valid art form, and I just don't like seeing it disregarded, but I am excited to see K2.
What about the agriculture scenes, right? We see I think it's Andor running through the wheat fields. We see Brasso being held back by 4 stormtroopers. We see a hug between Bix and Cassian in right by one of the fighters. So, is this the planet they were all sent to after the riots there on Ferrix? Like, what do you think about this agricultural planet that they're on? There's something that you don't see much of in Star Wars in this way.
No, but you know where you do see those big open fields of those plains is Lothal.
Yes.
Is it going to be Lothal? Right. No, it's not. It's not going to be Lothal. And here's the thing. Literally every time Star Wars fans see a planet they think they recognize, they end up thinking, it's Hoth or it's Coruscant or it's Lothal. 90% of the time it's not. It ends up being a new planet, which is probably the case here. However, Dantooine is the other option. And it's unfortunate that Kevin Smets is not here today, because I learned that in Knights of the Old Republic, you actually see Dantooine with these same exact grassy plains.
Wow.
And there's also Doug Chiang concept art for Rogue One that featured Dantooine, because at one point there was a plan to feature the escape from Dantooine in Rogue One.
Yeah.
So that concept art exists out there, and it looks a lot like this. So I have a feeling that that's what we're gonna see play out, is that escape from Dantooine in this at some point in one of the 4 sections of this series of season 2. But that's my guess. I think that's most likely. Even though I say every time we try to suspect something like this, we're always wrong. But any other theories for you that are, if a pre-existing planet, are probably wrong?
No, I mean, I'm not as knowledgeable on planets as you are, and some of the other Star Wars fans are. I'm just more look at environments, and I've loved that we went into an agricultural environment. It reminded me of when they first came upon Ezra in Rebels, like the first few episodes, right? And so that to me brought it back in my head, as you mentioned. And so to see it here, the way it's again, the way he's shooting this, Tony, I mean, it looks theatrical as hell. The way you have that hug, the Brasso yelling as the stormtroopers are holding him back. So it just feels like these are sections, just like they're playing it out. This is probably all part of a 3-episode one. Everything on that planet is part of a 3-episode a week, and then everything else out. And then there's different things that they're showing us, but I bet the marriage and Orson Krennic, all of that is a 3-episode thing. And the other part of this too, we get a shot of Cyril, right? And Cyril's mom. And clearly, Laura, they've moved up in the world. Cyril has a nice coif haircut. He's got higher quality robes. His mom has beautiful haircut herself, and the dress that she's wearing, the attitude's still there. And by the way, that actress was fantastic in Black Doves. If you guys haven't watched that series on Netflix, highly recommend it. So what did you think seeing Cyril and his mom?
He may have been like one of my least favorite characters from season 1 of the show.
Wow.
I just found him like really irritating. So I wasn't like super jazzed to see him again. He featured much in this trailer, which is honestly fine by me.
Does he remind you of one of these finance bros?
You know what? That might be it. That might be it. I wonder if that's what it is. Something about him I don't like.
Yeah, and I like the ending with before we get to the smirk of Andor, is Saw like grabbing him, right? Grabbing who he's grabbing there, telling them about getting into the fight, you got to get into the fight. And I just absolutely love that. So the energy overall, this trailer was just the right amount of energy to get you excited. We are not that far away from this thing. I think a month and a half from it coming out. And so I imagine there's going to be one more trailer, probably going to be around the 90-second mark as well, because I don't want to give too much away. But man, this is exciting stuff. And if you had any concerns about a season 2 of Andor or a sophomore slump, it seems like they're leveling up more than they would be slumping. And that's exciting coming out of this trailer, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure. I'm surprised that I'm surprised at your theory with the trailer, because I have a feeling, number one, I'm kind of surprised this one was as long as it was. For a teaser, I figured it would actually be a little bit shorter and we wouldn't see as much. I'm expecting that like 3 to 4 weeks out from that release, that we'll probably get a full-length trailer that's that's a little bit longer. Yeah. But probably is going to be showing us a lot of the same stuff that we saw in this one, because you're right, not wanting to give too much away. And you kind of have to remember that like Star Wars pattern a lot of times has been to like keep these trailers contained to like mostly shots from the first 3 to 4 episodes. Generally doesn't go much beyond that. I kind of hope that that's not the case here, because there is so much that's packed into this trailer.
Right.
I have to imagine that we're getting little glimpses of the entire season, but I'll be very interested to see what the full-length trailer that we get looks like at some point.
Anything you were hoping to see that you didn't see? Anything you were wanting to see? And anything, I guess that's all I'm saying. Anything that we didn't talk about, or anything that you were hoping to see in this trailer?
I don't think so. I did see some speculation that there was some Mandoa writing on one of the. So it was a really quick shot, but there's just some language that people weren't quite sure exactly what it was. May have been Mandoa, and then that's going to snowball into like, are they going to do a whole thing with the Mandalorians in the show? And I'm going to be honest, I hope they don't. I don't think that that's the story that Tony Gilroy has set out to tell. I think that's a big enough story to be its own separate thing altogether. But it just was kind of an interesting theory. That I heard about that I kind of hope doesn't come to fruition. But beyond that, I went in with pretty like open expectations. I have talked a lot about how season 1 wasn't my favorite. I've never actually done like a rewatch of it, so I will have to do that at some point, and I'll be curious to see what a rewatch feels like, if I have different feelings when I walk away from it, because this trailer is really exciting, and I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, for someone who was lukewarm about Andor, it's great to hear that you're excited about it through this trailer. So I hope it works well. I mean, I have to say, I thought maybe we might see a little tease of Andy Serkis, but we didn't. So we'll see. I thought maybe, yeah, like something off screen, a line off screen or something, or a hand or that made you know that it was him. But I guess they're saving that for maybe the show. So we'll see overall. All right. Any final words on this? So shall we wrap it up here, Laura?
No, let's wrap it up. I think we covered it all.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us here on this episode of The Jedi Way. We so enjoy and love talking Star Wars. And would love to hear what you all think. What are your thoughts on the Kathleen Kennedy situation? Who do you think is going to take over? What do you think is going to happen with all these movies that are in production or in development, or in projects that are in production and development? Let us know what you think about it all down in the comment section below. What stood out to you about the Andor season 2 trailer? Did we miss anything? Do you have speculation or hints of where you think we might be going? Would love to hear from you all about that. Laura, another fun show. Thanks so much. Always love talking Star Wars with you. Please let people know where they can find you and hear more of your stuff and knowledge on Star Wars.
Yeah, find my podcast, Forced Toast, a Star Wars Happy Hour. At my friend Alice and I talk about a lot of Star Wars topics. There hasn't been like a ton of news up until today and like the day before that, where all of this news finally dropped after we recorded an episode. But our most recent episode, if you're following the High Republic, we covered Phase 3 High Republic comics. So we did the mini-series, that's the High Republic Adventures. It's called Dispatches from the Occlusion Zone. We did a sort of recap and review of that, and then we reviewed the first issue of the Marvel High Republic comic run. First of, I'm sure, 12 issues or so. But yeah, so that's where we're at over in Forced Toast. You can find us on Blue Sky at Forced Toast Pod, and you can find me on Blue Sky at Shutup-Laura.
There you go. As for me, at the Rocha says on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and Blue Sky. And please remember to subscribe to the channel down below. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell button as we go along, so you know when all the stuff we got dropping here, like Geek Buddies, the Hot Mic, my trailer reactions. I'll be doing some more live shows. All of that popping up there for you if you hit that bell button once you subscribe. All right, and our shout out to our brother Kevin Smets. He will be back on the next show. But until then, Laura, what do we have to tell him?
Always remember, your focus determines your reality.